All right, let's talk a little bit about hammer and trigger pins and what we can do about them. So the hammer and trigger pins, if you notice on this is just a trigger demo, but the pins right here, what happens is with the standard AR15 trigger, which is what we have in here, the hammer, it rotates around this pin. And of course, down here is the trigger pin. But the pin goes through the hammer on the inside. So this is kind of an exploded view of an actual AR15. What happens when you squeeze that trigger and the hammer moves forward and backwards then, so and the bolt will push it backwards once it cycles, is that pin actually spins with this hammer, which can be a problem because over time, there's also a spring putting pressure on this hammer in a certain direction. And over time, as that thing turns, it's almost like a drill, and the hole in your receiver that holds that pin will become oblong. Over enough time, if that hole oblongs enough, it will not function properly, and there's nothing you can do except for replace the receiver. Now that's problematic if receivers ever become illegal and you can only have grandfathered receivers. That's not the current case, but that could be the case. So you want to take care of your receiver. And part of my philosophy of firearms is I'm creating guns that you can pass on to your grandkids and that they can pass on to theirs. And so those little areas of friction that add up over time, we want to address those. So there are two ways that we can address that. One is with a traditional AR-15 firing system, trigger system, we can use what they call a non-rotating pin set. So what this does is, if you notice on this one, there's a little, in this case, a gold bar in between the two pins. This gold bar essentially holds both pins in place so they don't rotate. And so the hammer revolves around that pin instead of the pin going with the hammer. So non-rotating pin sets are a great solution for the traditional AR-15 trigger. Now, there are also some of these really nice drop-in triggers. This one's a Trigger Tech, and I mean, it is just awesome and smooth. The only problem with traditional pins in this, oh, look at that. If you felt that, it'd just be beautiful. And it's even done it a little bit on my demonstrator, is these pins will walk out because unlike the traditional trigger, there's this drop-in is self-contained with all the springs, so there's no tension holding that pin in place. So what we do there for a drop-in trigger, and I've just done this for one of my customers, is if you look right up here, those are called anti-walk pins, where instead of a traditional pin that's just set in place and held in place by the power of the spring, these ones have threading on the outsides, and you thread them in there, and that way they won't go, if you're looking at the rifle this way, they won't go to the left or right. They will stay in place, keeping your drop-in trigger in place and not moving. So those are the two standards that we use that I would recommend, even if you already have an AR-15, if you have a traditional trigger, upgrade that pin set to a non-rotating pin set, or if you have a drop-in. The problem with the drop-in, if you use standard pins, sometimes they'll slide out, and if you're out in the field shooting or at the range shooting, they slide out, your trigger will stop functioning properly. The hammer won't always hit the firing pin, and it's going to end your day at the range. So take care of that. Again, this is some of the things that we do that are standard operating procedures that we believe sets us above the rest of our competition. But those are some again, some great upgrades if you already have a gun, or if you're looking to buy one, comes standard on ours.